I want to officially welcome you to our webinar today with the Houston Dynamo. This is a new series called Inside Look, and we're so excited to launch it and to share it with you all. I think you're going to really enjoy it. To give you a little bit of background about us, Libris empowers effortless visual storytelling, both through our tools and through webinars like this one. Get social with us. You can tweet at us throughout the webinar. We can answer your questions there or after the fact. Be sure to follow @GetLibris. And now I want to officially get started. Our guest today is Juan Loya, the creative director from the Houston Dynamo, and we are so excited about this brand new series, Inside Look. We're going to take you inside the Libris accounts and visual media libraries of some of our top clients, and we're kicking it off today with the Houston Dynamo. Juan, thank you so much for being here. We're really excited about this, and we can't wait to hear everybody's questions. We're going to take questions throughout today, so please feel free to chime in throughout the whole thing. We want this to be a conversation. This is really your session. You know, it's a time for you to ask the questions you want to know the answers to, and we want to kind of guide the conversation by what you guys want to hear. So definitely chime in. And with that, I'll hand it over to you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks. And
Yoav's going to hand off the presentation to you now so you can kind of give us a behind the scenes look. We're so excited.
Great. Okay. Great. Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for being here. I'm happy to talk about our library and the way we tag things at the Houston Dynamo. And just going to give you kind of a behind the scenes look at our library. So just to give you a bit of background, I've been with the Houston Dynamo since 2010. At the tail end of 2010, 2011 was my first full season with the team. So this makes this my 10th season with the Houston Dynamo and the Houston Dash. And one of the things that I get frequently asked, when I talk to people about what I do at the Houston Dynamo, people ask, what do you like about working there? And my easy answer is just that every single year that I'm here at the Dynamo, there's just a new challenge, a new milestone, something different to kind of differentiate the year, and it just keeps things interesting and fun to come back to work every year, every season. And I thought I'd show you a little bit of that with our PhotoShelter library. So my first year with the team was in 2011, and this was the team's last season at University of Houston Robertson Stadium. So that was kind of the entire year was kind of a send-off to that venue, and this is where the team got its start. When it moved here from San Jose. The following year in 2012 was the year we opened our stadium in East Downtown Houston. It's BBVA Stadium. And as you can see, this was opening day. It was, obviously a big momentous occasion, and everything about that day was just, an iconic, moment for our club. And we still play in the stadium today. It's still, a brand new stadium that people fill up to watch the Dynamo and the Dash play. In 2013, we had the pleasure of, introducing the Houston Dash, the women's team, to Houston. And I had the privilege of designing the logo for the team, and this was the press conference where we announced the creation of the team. And then the following year, they began playing. The year, in addition to different achievements on the field, whenever we signed, we had a fun photo shoot with him whenever we announced that. And then this year, obviously, what's going to be memorable to me is that we're not playing. So. It's been an adjustment. Our season, we only played 2 games before the season was suspended, and we're obviously all of us are hoping that we'll be playing again soon. So, but that kind of gives you a big overview of what my experience with the club has been, since 2010, and that will kind of just lead me into maybe just some case studies of how we use our library to create content. So obviously, since the season is suspended, a lot of the content that we're sharing on our platforms is historical, it's throwback. We're doing a lot of retro content. If you go to our Instagram page, there's a lot of, throwback material that we're kind of repurposing. Since we're not playing games currently, we're kind of highlighting these iconic moments throughout Dynamo history. And, as I mentioned, our first 2 years in 2006 and 2007 were championship years. So we're rebroadcasting those championship games and then creating graphics and video content to match those moments. And in addition to, the video, we're highlighting quotes, memories from players who played in those games. This is Brian Ching, who is kind of a legend in our club. He gave us a quote of what it felt like to score a goal in the 2006 championship. And as you can probably guess, that moment is something that every fan, is pretty familiar with. They know the imagery around that moment. This is his celebration whenever he scored that goal. This is him pointing to supporters to kind of thank them for being there and watching them, win on the field. So when we were going to talk about that moment, I didn't want to just use those same two images that we use all the time, and just trying to find some alternate images, and that's where PhotoShelter kind of comes in handy. So as you can see here, we have a photo database that goes back to the very first year of our existence. If you go to 2006 through 2009, those 4 years, a lot of our images are from Getty Images. That was our photo service at the time, and they're not necessarily as organized as they are today. So if you go to Dynamo matches and Dash matches, everything is sorted out by game. But for those first few years, it's mostly just kind of a big repository of images from all around the league. It's not even specific to our team. But when you come to MLS Cup, obviously those are images that we're going to want to go to very frequently. So those are all tagged. And you can see now all of these are from that library, but they're tagged MLS Cup 2006. And you can see, some great fan images. This guy, there's that iconic Brian Ching moment. And like I said, when anytime we're talking about Brian Ching in any kind of context, these are the images that we use a lot. So trying to find an image to pair with that graphic, just going through the library, seeing if there's anything else that we could use. Came on this one. And some of the great things about these Getty images is that they have a lot of great data in them to make searching very, very useful. And so this, obviously identifies this as a moment right after he scored that equalizing goal. And what I like about this photo is that, it isn't just him, another icon of the club, Brad Davis, is here celebrating with him. So as you can see, that is ultimately the photo that we use for that piece of content. And, again, just to reiterate, obviously every team, organization, every sport, there are these iconic moments that fans know over and over again because, they're kind of embedded in people's memories. So it's our job and our challenge to try to find some kind of lesser known or lesser seen images to accompany, our content.
Awesome. We had a quick question come up about your workflow, and Robert asked, can you talk a little bit about your workflow just from capture to uploading to your library on Libris, and then, just kind of a quick step-by-step of how that works?
Yeah, of course. So on game days, we have team photographers who capture all of our images, and they upload everything via FTP to this library here. It's in real time. They're on the field. They're capturing images and uploading them, and the designers and PR team and communications were in the press box, taking the images. We're, putting our Photoshop touches on them and then adding, any information that we need to them. So if we're going to be using that photo for a game graphic, or a score graphic, we're adding the score or, other information like that, and then it's shared to social media. And so those are the images that we get in the moment, and you can see usually in our in each library, like the first 20 or so photos are these photos that came in live, so they're not necessarily color corrected or anything. And then as you go through the library, you start to see the photos that were uploaded after the game, usually like the Sunday or Monday after a Saturday game. And those have been color corrected. And these are the ones that we will tag after the fact with keywords and metadata, and use these in our content throughout the season. So if you look on a picture like these, you can see, this is tagged with a player, a sponsor. If it's a celebration moment, we have some of these are tagged with celebration. Some of them are tagged with whether there's multiple players in the picture, and that kind of gives you a rundown of how that happens on a game day. And then for everything else, we besides games, we have a lot of different events, whether they're team trainings or events in the community or photo shoots, and those are all also uploaded to PhotoShelter and organized, by date in these galleries and collections.
One, two requests, or there's a follow-up question. Will you just maybe zoom in a bit on your browser, and just a kind of follow up here, and I think you're going to dive into this a little later, but what kind of equipment are you guys using to do the wireless capture? It says to do the wireless capture in text, or just the wireless. This is the equipment that you guys are using.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's our photographer. I don't know exactly which camera he's using, but I do know that it has FTP capabilities built into it. And so whenever he's capturing photos, he does select images that he sends to us via FTP, and when they arrive in our incoming files folder here. I could actually probably tell you just by looking at his metadata.
Yeah, I'm sure it's in the exit there. We also have a guide about how to set this up, and we have a list of different camera bodies that have wireless transfer built in, so we can share that after the fact too.
Yeah, so he's using a Nikon D5. Yeah, great. Any other questions?
We had a couple about tagging.
Yeah.
You want to read those out?
Sure, yeah. Just who do you have tagging was kind of the first one here. And do you have any issues with inadequate or incorrect metadata or tagging, and how do you correct this? There's a follow-up, but let's start with those.
Sure. So in these historical photos, most of these are just what came with the photos whenever we received them from Getty. And fortunately, they're pretty good as far as the amount of information that was provided in these photos. When it comes to the more recent stuff, so as you can see here, there's a headline, there's a caption, the photographer is credited. There's pretty good information in each of these photos from these Getty images. When you start getting into like 2018, 2019, those, and I'll use 2019 as 2020 as an example. These matches, over the years, our process changes a little bit depending on, who we have on staff. And some years it's a graphic design intern who's doing it. Some years it's a PR communications intern who's tagging the photos. For this most recent season, our sponsorship team has an intern who is tagging all of the photos after the fact in the office. And so, just as an example, here are some of the keywords that they use to tag each of the photos. And obviously, since it's a sponsorship employee, they're focusing on, what partners are being tagged in each of the photos. But then, we have other, if it's a location in the stadium, they want that tagged as well. This isn't on the list, but obviously they're tagging each player. They're tagging whether it was a goal celebration. And like I said, sometimes they're tagging if there's 4 players in a photo, because our sponsorship partners require, it's a league rule that if a sponsor is using one of our images, it can't have just one player in it. So our sponsorship team is always asking us to find photos of players with 4 players in each photo. And then, one of the common things that people ask us for is, just good photos of the stadium. So we have those tagged as well to show, just those beauty shots of the stadium with a full crowd in it. And these are pictures of our supporters. That's another one that people ask a lot for, because they're kind of, essential to the culture of the club, is the supporter groups who, make the game day experience kind of what it is. And so these are great ones that we share with partners all the time as well.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that you guys have looped in sponsorship in that way, and that their team is actually helping tag the images, because they're the ones who are so often going to need to use them and share them. How did that conversation come about, and how did you guys make that decision?
Yeah, so like I said, it's changed over the years. Sometimes it's something that we're very hands-on with if we have an intern in the graphics department doing it. But truthfully, there's usually a lot of graphics work that I need a graphics intern to do. And so if we have a PR communication person doing it, that's usually ideal, because they're the people who are very, very familiar with the team and can very knowledgeably tag all the players and the information that we need. And then, bringing in sponsorship, they were always a component of it, because they needed to be able to quickly search for a sponsor for whenever they're making their recaps. So a big sponsor of ours is BBVA, obviously, or Adidas, or our shirt sponsor is MD Anderson. And so if they have a title night and they want to pull together all of the elements that were used in that activation, or just great images of the jersey, being able to quickly find here's how we used your logo on a video board. That's why having the sponsorship team be involved in the tagging was really ideal. So I think they have been involved in the past couple of years, and I think this season, like I said, we only played 1 game at home. Having them kind of take the lead on all of the tagging was really beneficial.
Yeah, that's great. Y'all, do we have some questions coming in?
We do. We have a lot coming in, and a lot of questions that are kind of about the built-in Wi-Fi capabilities and the real-time workflow, which we'll definitely share those out.
Yeah.
Some of those, I know we have a lot of resources on that. Before we go into the questions, a couple of comments, some fun comments,
Sure.
Just people loving really the beautiful portrait photography that you shared in the beginning. And I guess Sean from Philly was a little miffed that you showed the Open Cup photos.
Yeah.
Still sour, I guess. And then jumping still on this topic of tagging and whatnot. Do you guys have a standard naming convention?
Yeah, so let me just dive into some of the images. So if you go to this most recent game that we played back in February, for players, it's just first name, last name. This one is tagged warm-ups. This was during our power up segment, so that's why it says power up. There's sweet mezzanine sign to let the sponsors know that that's going to be a photo that they can use in a recap there. Every moment of the game, whether it's halftime, whether it's warm-ups, national anthem, those kind of things get tagged, and just makes it super useful for us to be able to find these images. One of the things that I've learned over the years is just that all of us intuitively just kind of have our own way of organizing things. It's all of us have kind of like that messy desk where we all know where everything is just because we're the ones who put it there. But just having a system like this that everybody else can utilize it, makes things it cuts down on the amount of times that people are asking me for, just let me get a great photo of a national anthem, let me get a great moment of, a full stadium. They have this resource that they can use to find those images on their own.
Awesome.
We want to keep rolling with some questions, or?
Well, I think there's one that relates closely to another thing that he was going to show us. So we had somebody ask, how do you handle photo distribution and access to external stakeholders, and how do you make them available to players? And then a related question, do you share photos with other teams? So can you kind of walk through the different groups of people who need access to your content and how you share with each of those groups?
Yeah, definitely. So, so the library does have kind of just an overall password that we use to share images, and then on certain galleries we'll create custom passwords. Everybody in the organization, for the most part, can access any of these images. I don't restrict it very much as far as to who can view them and download the images. Nobody's really abused that or anything. When it comes to partners, obviously we give them more specialized access. When it comes to sharing with our players, our players obviously love photos of themselves. They, these guys are on social media. They, are a brand unto themselves. And so, even whenever they're arriving at the stadium, we have staff who are taking pictures of them. I'll show you. When they arrive at the stadium, they're with their families. If they don't have families, they're just showing up on their own. We take those pictures and we share them, but they also want them for themselves, to remember the games and to share them with their own fans. So the way we share them is through a platform called Socially. Now, whenever we have tagged a photo, so here's just some arrival photos. Whenever we tag these players, they get a notification through an app called Socially that lets them know that there are images for them to download and distribute. And what's great about that platform is, it just takes, because before that, it's sharing things through WhatsApp or, text message chains. I'm getting a text or a Slack message from somebody in PR saying, hey, this player wants that photo that you took while they were coming in. And it's just a very, not efficient process. So, just having a tool that can integrate with PhotoShelter like Socially, you can have these images tagged. So these are images that have been tagged with Memo Rodriguez. He gets a notification that there are these images for him to download. And then once he downloads them and shares them, we even get data that shows, how much engagement they got by sharing those photos, which is useful for us as well. So like these are images of, that we took on media days. These are just photos that we took during practice, but, these guys, they want all the photos that we can provide. And so that's a useful platform for doing that.
Awesome. And you guys have it set up where as soon as it hits a certain gallery in Libris with a specific tag, it gets automatically routed to Socially, right? So that you don't have to do anything extra. Yeah, that's great.
Right, correct. Yeah.
Awesome. Very cool. Great. Well, what else did you want to show us? I know we have a bunch more questions too, but I know you also had a couple other things planned out, so I want to make sure we get to everything.
Yeah, sure. I guess just to end things, I was going to share, one of the things that, we have a new coach this season. His name is Tab Ramos. He's a very celebrated coach in the soccer world. And when he came on board, he really wanted, he asked us in the graphics department to create, text in the locker rooms that have the message, our family versus their team. They really wanted to stress that, even in this is in their practice facility, but also at the stadium locker room, they have the same message, our family versus their team. And one of the things that makes me think of, obviously, is, we have players who have been with the club for a long time, and one of them is Bonia Garcia. He joined, a year after I did. This is in 2012, and these are the photos that we took to announce his signing. He's from Honduras. He's, a legend in our club. And, when I think about, him being a member of our club and being, part of that family that we talk about, these are just images of him in different competitions. One iconic moment that I always think of is in 2013. He scored a goal and then celebrated by stuffing a soccer ball under his shirt to announce that his wife was expecting, and then he held up 2 fingers to announce that they were having twins. And to me, that's just one of my favorite photos from Dynamo history, because just Bonia Garcia is just known for his kind of infectious smile, and the way that he's just just a very positive, great person. And the twins themselves have become kind of icons of the club as well. Everybody who follows the team knows who they are. Here they are participating in a soccer camp. Even just coming out on field. All of our players, who have kids, have these special moments. And here are the Boniek twins, sharing a moment with their dad. Every time we see them, anytime we share stuff with them, people just go nuts. And then even most recently, this is in January, they're producing content for us. They're helping us promote Soccer Starts at Home, which is a program that we've started to kind of teach soccer skills from an early age that you can do from your own home. So I just like the fact that, obviously that moment, back in 2013, was just a great moment in itself, but it kind of, continued past that and just kind of shows the family nature of our club.
That's awesome. I love that story, and I think it's such a good way to also plug our next webinar with you, which is on April 24th. And we're going to talk about their, whole storytelling strategy, but especially the work that the Houston Dynamo does off the field and with the community in Houston. So be sure to tune in for that. We'll share the link after the fact, but it'll be on April 24th at 2 p.m. Eastern, just like this one. And that one will be less about organizing and more about, creating connections with the community. So be sure to come back for that one too. But now we want to take all of your questions. I know we still have a bunch coming in. Yoav, do you want to start throwing some at us?
Yes, definitely. I love this question. It really, actually, I'm going to save that one and ask this one first. All right. So just a little bit jumping back to metadata tagging. And actually, I would say this is just general organization. How do you guys go about identifying the best of the best? Do you have a rating system, a way to track how often an image is used or downloaded? Kind of what's your organizational approach to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And unfortunately, I haven't created a rating system. I think in some years, and I can't think off the top of my head when we would have done that, but I know some years we took a stab at creating like 4 stars, for a great image. For the most part, the images that, at least in the graphics department, that we're looking for, they are those celebrations, because those are the images that for us are just the most useful for creating game graphics. And so for me, just typing in celebration usually pulls up the best goal moments from each game that we want to highlight. So that's not the best way to find some of these great images, but it works for us, at least in graphics. When it comes to other departments, I think they have different keywords that they use for those go-to images.
Yeah, I've also heard of some teams using star ratings. If anybody else has an answer for that too, we'd love to hear from the chat too. But I think you have to just figure out what works for your team.
Cool. Another question is actually about road games. How do you guys capture and distribute photos when you're on the road?
That's a great question. So we don't have staff who travel to every road game. We do have videographers who travel to almost every Dynamo and Dash game. And then we, in some cases, have team staff travel for road games, but not as frequently. So whenever they're on the road, we're usually getting our images from USA Today Images. This is an example of a game we played in Kansas City. And so you can see these are from a photographer from our wire service. But then, there are occasions when we, travel to kind of our more high profile games. We have images. This is when the Dash played Tigres in Mexico. And so we have some great images of the team playing over there. And these were captured by our in-house staff who traveled with the team.
Awesome. Yeah, we got a creative answer from the last question too. Brace Hemmelgarn from the Twins is on the line, and he mentioned that they use star ratings and tag the best photos with the word "wow." I like that one.
Yeah, that's great.
Awesome. What's next, Yoav?
Up next is a little bit of different. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm all over the place today.
You didn't ask your favorite question.
I know. Yeah, just this question really blew my mind. So someone was noticing that you use IPTC metadata. What is the reason or preference of IPTC over custom metadata choices?
Good question.
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, because that metadata was already embedded in a lot of the photos that we got, that was just what I just carried on that practice. But we could definitely, that is just something I haven't really explored, using the different types of metadata. But that's just continuing kind of the practice that we had in place. But over the past week or so, knowing that a lot of people were going to be viewing our library is giving me an opportunity to kind of clean up. Like it kind of felt like company was coming over, so I just kind of was taking a look at the way we do things, and that is something that I thought of as something that I should probably take a deeper look into, the different options of tagging.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for letting us come over.
Sure.
Also, to talk about custom metadata a little bit, custom metadata is great for controlled lists. So for example, jersey color, so it might be like orange, black, but it's not as good for, that industry standard captioning. So I think the best thing to do is a little bit of both, but use custom metadata when it really makes sense to have that kind of controlled list view.
And we're getting a lot of questions about, I guess, accessibility. So I'll just choose one, but this might lead to a much longer conversation. Do you view, okay, so I'll read the whole thing. Adam from Minnesota works for a public university, and his question is, what is the best way to deploy content using permissions with hundreds of constituents, whether they be faculty members, staff, players, people on your PR team, etc. Do you view kind of that deploying content and permission as more the merrier, or do you limit the number of invited users? Kind of what's y'all's approach to that?
Yeah, so for us, for the most part, everything on here for the most part is viewable. I don't keep a lot of walled gardens or anything like that. Obviously, there are some situations where we have a player signing and we have signed them and taken photographic images, but and that's not ready to share yet. So those will be walled off. The jerseys are a great example of something that we get these images ahead of time and they're not viewed by anybody for months, and so these are walled off by password. But once they've been released, I'm a fan of just making everything accessible to everybody, and that way that cuts down on the amount of questions that I get about where can I get these great images. Just giving everybody the access, at least to view them. Downloading is another thing that can be controlled as well. But I know that there are features in here as well as far as watermarking and that type of thing. But for the most part, everybody in our organization, to me, it's just the more that I can communicate that this tool exists and without limitations, the more I get buy-in from different departments to actually use it, and that's just very helpful for us.
Yeah, the easier it is for people to access content, the more likely they will be to actually use it.
Right.
Cool. And actually, one of your colleagues, Trask Smith, is on the call.
We're using his images in this whole presentation.
And yeah, very beautiful images. He chimed in that someone earlier wanted to know how they upload photos live from the field. And they have 3 hotspots at the field level where they connect the camera bodies to Ethernet cables. And then they select certain photos like goal celebrations to upload live during the game. He uses, and the other main photographer use Nikon D5, which has an Ethernet port.
And that was a follow-up question too, was how many photographers do you have on the field during the game?
Yeah, so Trask Smith is definitely a great collaborator with us, and then Wilf Thorne also. He's been with the club longer than I have. The two of them are the 2 main photographers who take photos during game days. And then in addition to them, there's a USA Today photographer who I don't have a lot of contact with, but we download their images from the wire service. We have our in-house graphic designer named Brian Salas, who is also a photographer, and on specific games he's taking photos. So that's up to 4. And then this was our first match of the season this year. So in addition to those 4, I think we had another 1 or 2 photographers who were capturing things. So it depends. So that would put us up to 6 for 1 game. But usually if it's a midweek game, we have Wilf and Trask kind of leading the charge in the photos. Brian, like I said, a designer in our department who takes photos, he's usually capturing more of the stadium experience. He'll capture those player arrival photos that I showed earlier. He'll get this stuff with the supporters. So that's kind of it's usually anywhere between 3 to 6, I guess.
Great.
Cool. So changing gears for a moment. I know this person's been waiting quite a while for this question to be asked. Do you guys utilize the Libris features for selling reprints or licensing image usage rights?
No, we don't. That's definitely something that we could take a look at. That sounds like an interesting feature, but no, that isn't something that we do currently.
All right, cool.
Awesome.
Next, are you storing your video and still images in the same gallery?
So that is one of the benefits of having this downtime. We've taken a look at our library, seeing how we can use it, and so we currently don't host any video here. We're going to begin to do that, and our video team is cataloging and archiving all of our videos. So we uploaded this one just as a test. I don't think that it would be integrated in with our photos. I think I would create a separate library for our video content. Because of the way that they organize their videos is not necessarily by game or by year. They're kind of organized differently. So I think that I wouldn't do it integrated with the photos. It would be a separate, database that I would create over here. But that's a good question. It's definitely something that we haven't utilized up until now, but in the last 3 or 4 weeks, I've been taking a second look at how do we store and share that video content as well.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. I'm going to actually ask you 3 questions at one time because I think they're somewhat related, and then you'll be able to speak to it. So here are the questions. Are you guys tagging directly in Libris or using the Lightroom plugin? When do you watermark photos and why? And are maybe if Trask is still on, he might be able to answer this. Also, are you guys shooting an all JPEG workflow or also shooting RAW files?
Okay. So on the watermarking, we currently don't use any watermarking. On the tagging, when it comes to our interns or other staff who are doing the photos and doing the tagging, they're doing it through Libris itself. I believe our photographers, and Trask can answer this as well, and Wilf, they tag, I think, using different apps prior to uploading them. But for our staff who just work in the office, they're just tagging directly in the PhotoShelter backend over here. So they're opening up the library and changing the metadata directly on the photos. And then what was the third one again?
Are you shooting JPEG workflow or RAW files?
Okay. So most of the photos that are uploaded are JPEGs. Some photographers that we work with will upload RAW, and those are useful as well. But for the most part, most of our library is just very high-res JPEGs.
Okay, wow, we've got a lot of great questions here. This is another one, just kind of changing topics a little bit. Does PhotoShelter track how often an image is downloaded or viewed? Are you guys
Great
looking at
question.
that? Or I don't know if Kristen, if you want to jump on that.
Yeah, I can. So PhotoShelter tracks your download log, so everything that's been downloaded. So I don't know, are you okay to share that one if you want to go in there? If you go to admin and then reports,
Yeah.
it would be your download report. So you can see everything that's been downloaded. So wow, oh my gosh, almost 10,000 downloads from your team in the past 90 days. That's amazing. That's a big number. I was not expecting that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is due to the fact that, like I said, when it comes to our content these days, a lot of it is diving into the archives and finding these photos. A lot of it's me, obviously, but
Yeah,
but we're
wow.
We're trying to find content that's relative, that's relatable and shareable to our fans in this moment where we're not playing games. And so having this resource of having photos from the last 10 years, last 15 years actually, is super, super useful for us. And so, yeah, there's a lot here.
Yeah, this is a lot. We also allow you to install Google Analytics on your site so you can see, what are your top viewed images and things like that. If you have any more specific questions about reporting, we're actually working on some new reporting capabilities now. So definitely let us know what you'd be interested in seeing, and we can see if we can add that to our list too.
And Trask has also chimed in with some answers, jumping back a couple questions about RAW and JPEG. He shoots both. He says he's one of the few sports photographers that doesn't shoot JPEG only, and they load live. What we load live are JPEG straight from the camera, and then he uses the RAWs for what he sends later.
Right.
So a lot going on there for sure. Let's see, Kristen, is anything jumping out at you? I mean, we can jump back to some of these questions about permissions. This is okay. Here's I know I just asked you. I'll jump into this question from someone who used to be the editor-in-chief at the Stockholm Pride. A problem they've had is how to get and document permissions for publication from people, especially visitors. How do y'all solve that? And then PS, the Wi-Fi real-time is really good. He says it's a really good feature that PhotoShelter solves brilliantly for us. They can publish within 5
Awesome.
minutes. All right, great.
That's great.
So how do you guys address that? Kind of permissions of if you want to publish something from visitors or anybody.
So like a visitor meaning like somebody that we've granted access to the library and just managing like how they share them.
Sure, we can go that direction. My sense is even like fans in the stadium, which I would imagine is something and not even necessarily a technological
Oh, I see.
solution.
So if we have so just for an example,
Let's say
this
social
family
media
here.
or something.
Yeah. Well, as far as like permissions for sharing images of visitors to a stadium, our policy is, if they're ticketed visitors to the stadium, then they have, that ticket, it covers our use of their imagery in these posts for like social media and things like that. And then, I don't know the particulars of, what the level of that permission is, but that kind of covers, at least our social media use for images of visitors to our stadium. And then as far as I'm trying to think of, those that that a visitor might take and share on their own channels. We don't really have any restrictions or anything that would limit their use there.
Okay. So a few more questions about kind of jumping all the way back to what we were talking about earlier about workflow.
Mhm.
And maybe we discussed this, but I'll ask it anyway. Do you have the photographers call through the images and upload the good ones, or does the photographer upload everything and your staff calls through the images?
So in the moment, on a game day, they're just uploading selects, kind of, the things that they know that we need in the moment, and that's usually if a goal is scored. But even outside of goals, we need good just action images of the players uh, during a game um, to kind of to put onto our social channels. So they're, obviously uploading just selects in that moment. At the conclusion of the game, for the most part, they're uploading um, as much as they can because obviously we don't use every image, but having just a wide library of images to use is very helpful for us. So on their end, we encourage them to share as much as they can. I mean, obviously, I'm sure that they do some um, quality control and don't send us literally everything, but I think that they do share quite a bit with us. Um, and then yes, on our end, after the fact, we are identifying those images that we are going to get a lot of use of and selecting those as um, those are the images that we're going to share with our sponsorship team or our PR. Those are the images that we're going to use on player cards or magazine covers, things like that, that we're, kind of cutting down from the larger library.
Okay, thank you. The next question, this is a great one. Sean from Philly asking for a friend. Let's say a team's
Yeah.
PhotoShelter is a bit more cluttered than yours. What's the first step you What's the first step you take to
That's
getting
fun.
organized? And what are 2 to 3 invaluable tags to use for things you might not think of right off the bat? So what's the first step you take to get organized? And what are 2 to 3 invaluable tags to use for things you might not think of right off the bat?
So my philosophy on even when it's outside of PhotoShelter, but just when it comes to organization in general, I'm not a huge fan of a lot of hierarchy or a lot of folders within folders. Whenever we organize our graphics files, it's really it's by game. If there's a different event, we have folders for a certain community event or something. Um, but you could really go deep on a hierarchy or file structure that can really take a lot to create. And so when it comes to our library here, I mean, I find it pretty simple to navigate. You have it's just by year. You have Dynamo matches, dash matches, and events, and not a lot, not a lot of subfolders. When you go to some early years, when we haven't really gone through and fixed things after the fact, you do see a lot of like nested galleries, like separated out by photographer. Sometimes they're separated out by if they're action images or sponsorship images. And for me, it's just more useful to have a folder that has everything in it. Everything's tagged, so it's still searchable. But I think if you try to create a lot of nested folders, it's just going to take you a long time to create that organized structure. So for me, I like to keep things pretty simple when it comes to organization. And for when we got started on this platform, obviously we had a lot of images to upload and to house in this portal. So it started by just uploading everything we had from 2006 to 2010, and those are all those Getty images, and they were just kind of how they were. And then the later years, when we had already had our own system for organizing them, those later years are the ones that are kind of more structured the way we typically organize these things. So I don't know if that's helpful at all, but for me, just having game by game, event by event, since we do have two teams, the men's team and the women's team. You know, they're divided that way as well. But I would just say, you know, finding whatever structure works best for you, if you is probably, you know, to me, I would just keep it as simple as possible.
Great. What's up next, Yoav?
Are you going to take the next one?
Oh, sure. Yes, I can do that. So we had a question from Samuel. Any plans to be able to upload images to a specific gallery or question outside of the incoming files collection? Yes, you can do that now. So when you go into your FTP settings, you have to just choose a destination gallery. So if you want to set a specific gallery ahead of time to send your photos into from the field, you can do that. We can share the FTP instructions with you if that's helpful after the webinar. But you can go ahead and do that now. If you don't select a gallery ahead of time, then it will automatically go into your incoming files collection and create a new gallery so that you can find it easily. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I can speak to that a little bit.
Go ahead.
Sure.
We used to have the FTP set to a specific game. And so when the photos were coming in, they were coming to the last played game. And then we quickly realized that that didn't really make sense, because if we didn't change it for every event, you know, people would ask us, hey, where are those photos? And, you know, we're like, oh, they're in last week's game. So that's when we created the workflow of, you know, having everything come into this live images folder.
Yeah, that's a great point.
All right, I am noticing that we're running a little low on time here. If you have any last minute questions that are really urgent, shoot them to us. But otherwise, I think we'll end on this one, which is pretty interesting. This is an interesting one. With the general folders for each games and permissions that aren't very limited, have you ever run into any problems with a sponsor or outside agents that have access to using photos in a way they shouldn't? Have you ever run into any problems with a sponsor or outside agent that has access using photos in a way they shouldn't?
No, and that's definitely, you know, kind of a philosophical, you know, you might have a different opinion about it. To me, my preference is to have it as open as possible. And so obviously not everything is accessible, you know, not everything is downloadable. But my preference is to be able to give people at least the access to view all the images. Because the alternative is, you know, when our partners don't have these images, what they're doing is they're going on Google and they just search for a Houston Dynamo image. And usually what they find are the graphics that we create. They're low res. You know, we've applied our filters to them. You know, sometimes we put like a halftone effect on a player or something just for effect. And then, you know, a partner is using that image to create some terrible ad or something. So once we've communicated, you know, through our sponsorship team or our PR team to, you know, whether it's a broadcast partner or a sponsor, that, hey, we have these images, this library of great photos that you can have access to, it ends up, the end result of that is that in the world, whenever people see Dynamo images, they're great Dynamo images. They're not terrible ones that are, you know, using, you know, low res Google images. So I haven't had any issues with people using anything of ours like in a way that they shouldn't. You know, occasionally, you know, we'll see something out in the world that, you know, isn't, you know, quite right, and, you know, we have a lot of people on staff that, you know, can reach out to the appropriate people and say, hey, that isn't, you know, the way we would use that. But for the most part, I'm just a fan of giving people, you know, when it comes to our partners, just giving them access to as much as possible.
Awesome. We had a quick request to show that spreadsheet again real quick. So if you could click over there, that would be awesome.
Yeah. So.
And to your last point too, I think it's a real testament to you and how you have made sure everybody knows they have easy access and, you know, gotten everybody on board. Do you have any real quick tips on how people can get everybody to know that your system exists and adopt it and use it regularly?
Yeah, it's just a constant thing, because you know, I'm sure a lot of people who are listening who work in the sports world know, you know, in sports, you know, sometimes there's a lot of high turnover, and so it's re-educating people, you know, throughout the years, you know, who come on that this exists, and so you know, everybody's going to have their own kind of what they use, whether they keep everything on a shared network drive. Obviously we still have that. We still have people who use Dropbox. We still have people who use Box. And then that makes sense for their particular workflows. But every time I get asked, what's the best way to get these images to people or to search for these images, it's just that constant reminding people PhotoShelter is there, and that's where everything is, and you're just benefiting yourself by using it and figuring out a good workflow for yourself and your department to use this asset. It comes up a lot in sponsorship. Obviously, that's one of the ones that I feel like I've brought up a lot this afternoon. But they're constantly creating proposals and sponsor decks, PowerPoints to communicate to people who aren't already a part of the Dynamo or Dash family. They're talking to potential clients, and so they're the ones who very, very frequently are looking for these images. And so reiterating to them that this exists, that they can use it and find the things that they're looking for. It's just one of those things that we just constantly communicate over and over again. And it's pretty frequently that somebody will ask me, what's the best way for us to organize these gallery of images. You'd be surprised, we still get that question because the answer is always the same. It's like it already exists and it's there on PhotoShelter. And then once they oh yeah, the light bulb goes off, I'm like, oh yeah, we already have it and it's there. And so it's just constantly having that conversation. And it's a pretty short conversation, to be honest, because once you send them the link and you show them the galleries, they're like they get it, and then they start using it.
That's great. Yeah, it should be easy for everybody. That's
right.
Great. Well, Juan, thank you so much. This was fantastic. Thank you to all of you. You guys made this such a hit. It was awesome to have all of you engaging, and we really appreciate you helping us, guide the conversation. We'd love to hear your feedback. Please feel free to reach out to us and share what you want to learn next and who else's library you might want to see. Or let us know if you want to share your own library. We're always looking for takers for this kind of stuff, so be sure to reach out to me. And don't forget to join us for our next round with the Houston Dynamo on April 24th. We're going to talk branding, going to talk social media, overall visual storytelling strategy. So be sure to come back and join us for that one. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks again.